Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Week 12 edition live stream coming to you a little bit early this week. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. We're on to Week 12 already, if you can believe it. So the playoff push is here. I know in my personal experience, I'm sitting there right on the fringe, right on the bubble. I need to get over the hump, get into the playoffs here. I think Scott Fishbowl, I think those playoffs are starting here soon. I did not do particularly well in that one. Brock Bowers, first overall pick for me. What are you going to do? But regardless, very, very important week. Let's get right to it, Mario. Looking at our odds board here on rotowire.com. We'll start things off at the top. Thursday night game, we got the Bills and the Texans. The Bills on the road for this one. The Bills are 5.5-point favorites. Josh Allen coming off of a full Josh Allen game. He went ballistic against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this past weekend, whereas the Texans with Davis Mills barely squeaked it out against the Tennessee Titans on the road this past week, but still Mills 2-0 as a starter. But again, Bills 5.5 or 6-point favorites, depending on where you look on the road for this one. CJ Stroud will not be available for this one per D'Amico Ryans on Tuesday. Fire us up.
Yeah, it was obviously a huge fantasy game for Josh Allen, but wasn't the cleanest game as a passer with the 2 picks and the 3 touchdowns. I kind of feel like that's something the Bills could do more often and just don't, because it's kind of like showing off to just sort of show how many touchdowns Josh Allen can score in a game like this. So those touchdowns, I don't know if they're like if they're a measure of how the Bills are improved based on this one game, or if it's just sort of like they needed a get right spot. They were kind of rolling and they kind of indulged themselves a little bit here. This Houston defense should be a bit tougher. I'm not sure. Sorry, I think John, am I getting some static here?
No, sir.
Okay, sorry. I
Sounding
guess
good.
my headphone's going to get a bit glitchy. But this Houston defense, I think, is probably tougher than the Buccaneers one. Not to diminish the Buccaneers one. That's a tough defense, and it's definitely a good sign that the Bills were able to bounce back against that defense, because it bodes better for their ability to go against Houston. But it'll be challenging, and I think Houston's maybe a little better at running kind of like zone scenarios with Kamari Lassiter sort of lurking in places that are maybe around like the depths that some of these receivers run. And if Keon Coleman's not coming back, I worry about the field kind of getting a little bit smaller on them. I assume he'll come back soon, and I assume if Coleman's locked in, his talent should be clearly enough better than the likes of Gabe Davis at all, and even Josh Palmer, that you can feel a little bit better about the Buffalo passing game staying strong all the way through. But I do worry that, especially given that there were 2 interceptions last week, like it still might have been, I don't know, one of those things where you're not out of the woods yet. But admittedly, if Josh Allen can keep rolling against Houston, that would mean the Bills are basically playoff ready.
I would think so too. Yeah, this Texans defense is incredible. It's one of the best, if not the best, in the league. So this is a big test, especially with Buffalo being on the road for this one. In regards to Coleman and just kind of like the rest of this group of Bills pass catchers, I believe Dalton Kincaid has been ruled out for this game.
Yeah.
So like the Bills would be kind of willingly be further shorthanded in this one if they were to keep Coleman out for the second week in a row. So I think he'll be back.
Yeah, it was interesting that Shavers had a pretty good game in his place. Wouldn't want I wouldn't want to be depending on Shavers going forward. If I was the Bills, though, I would have to see that as a somewhat fortunate and fluky thing, whatever way. And it's just one of those things where going into the year, if you were told, by the way, Keon Coleman won't be very good, you would worry at that point about the Buffalo passing game. So it really, he needs to step up, I think, for them to kind of safely meet the standards they went into the year with, because otherwise I guess they're going to have to do like a 2 tight end when they're without Kincaid, and with Kincaid 3 tight end often kind of offense. And that's just a weird look. And you'd like to have a real receiver to go with Allen when he's playing like this.
You would. So he's just kind of seemingly having to go, hero ball a lot here down the stretch potentially because it doesn't feel like after the trade deadline passed, like it doesn't feel like there's like that big reinforcement incoming for Allen to kind of take some of the pressure off and make his life a little bit easier. Do you think that someone like a Dawson Knox becomes like streamer viable given the buys this week if you're kind of pinched to tight end?
I think you could do worse, but it's tough. I guess it's a case by case kind of thing where definitely don't go running for Knox, in my opinion. But if you're just in a difficult spot, I suppose you could do worse than, if a tight end is playing 45, 50 snaps in the Josh Allen offense, you could do worse than that as a starting point.
Sure, and he's got a long enough rapport with Allen. Looking at the Texans side, we've got 2 games of sample in the AFC South for Davis Mills, having played against the Jags and the Titans these last 2 weeks. What are your thoughts on this offense and your fantasy assets within it with Mills at the helm?
Well, he's not terrible in my opinion, but Mills is not good. And to be fair to him, this offensive line still is trash. So the Bills, this defensive line, uh, in my opinion, hasn't shown its full upside at this point, and it obviously can't when Ed Oliver isn't out there. But even somebody like Bosa, it's like if he gets fully healthy, stays fully healthy with Rousseau on the other side, it's like that is a tandem that can go pretty nuts, I think, down the stretch here. And Daquan Jones he's always been a pretty solid 2 gap guy. So Deion Walker, Ogunjobi, Jordan Phillips, TJ Sanders, whatever, that's still it's at the very least an athletic group of defensive linemen. And I think they're pretty good in general. So Houston's offensive line doesn't really get the benefit of the doubt against any defensive line. And even without Ed Oliver, I think you can get pretty worried about this Bills pass rush, and even the run defense, really. I mean, like, these guys can definitely split gaps. Rousseau, Walker, Jones, they have a lot of reach. So I'm worried about the Houston offense. If Davis Mills does poorly, it's not something where it's like, oh, he sucks for this. It's more like, yeah, you kind of should have seen it as a difficult matchup.
I think people are going to be a little bit tempted on the Texans run game. I know last week wasn't particularly great for it against the Titans, but seeing what like Sean Tucker was able to do against the Bills, but
Yeah.
what in your mind is like the chasm, the gap between the quality of the Bucks offensive line versus that of Houston?
It's quite a bit different. Although even the Buccaneers, I think we're down to a third stringer at the very least, a second stringer at right guard. I forgot to see if Gedeke was playing, but this Houston, this Houston offensive line, of course, is not very good. And in my opinion, Woody Marks is just not good enough of a pure runner to do things that Sean Tucker does. I always thought I still kind of think those 40 times that Sean Tucker was posting from his personal pro day or whatever, back when he was coming out of Syracuse, they seemed very obviously fake because he was listing like 4.28 or something like that. But he might be like a low 4.4 kind of runner or something. He looked pretty fast on some of those carries. And I think Nick Chubb is closer to that even now than Woody Marks is. And Nick Chubb, I think he's looked pretty good at times, but I don't have a good sense of where he really is at. And in any case, if Nick Chubb is your best pure runner at this point, and if your offensive line is as bad as Houston's is, I wouldn't take a whole lot for granted in the ground game. I mean, maybe Houston tries at least a lot, and maybe something good happens, but it's just not enough raw talent to work with.
I don't think so either. So I can't anticipate a repeat performance from this Bills run defense this week. I think they'll have a much easier time slowing down the Texans, and of course, they won't have to worry about the passing game quite as much as they did against Tampa Bay. For some reason, I think I still kind of am leaning towards taking the home underdog here with a number that big, and the way that the Bills have kind of had a penchant for letting down at
The
certain
Houston
points
defense
this
will
season.
show up.
Yeah, so I'll take the points here, but I think that the Bills ultimately get this one done, and we don't get a lot of fantasy juice from the Texans on this one. We do have a question on the Texans side of this ledger. So we have a fantasy manager here who already has Aronde Gadsden, or already has Brock Bowers, has Gadsden as well. So kind of looking to deal from that luxury depth at the tight end position, giving away Stephon Diggs and Aronde Gadsden for Nico. Is Nico a good enough return in your opinion?
The Nico part is definitely, worth pursuing. What I'm a little bit worried about is whether you could maybe get a little bit more, even if it's just sort of a throw in at the backup type at another position. Just I only say that because Stephon Diggs, I think, looks pretty valuable right now, and he to me is closer. He's no worse than a wide receiver 3, and is closer to a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 4 in my mind. So while I think Nico Collins is a clear wide receiver 1 when Stroud gets back, I don't know what to make of the Stroud thing exactly. I mean, I'd like to think it's safe to assume he'll just be back next week, no questions asked. But I don't know if that's a hasty thing to assume. And yeah, if you're throwing in Gadsden too, I mean that's obviously you don't have a use for Gadsden when you have Bowers, but that's 2 really valuable players. So I guess I would try to sort of lowball them one last time, and if they reject it, maybe go to make this trade because I do think Nico's an upgrade. It's just I feel like they're kind of getting a little bit away with some bargain on their part.
Yeah, I would if you're maybe a little bit light at running back depth or something like that. Get a throw in to that you could maybe stream here a little bit down the stretch. I think would make sense because those 2 for Nico feels like you're giving up just a little bit too
They're
much,
getting
or
2 starters for sure.
yeah, so like maybe either aim a little bit higher with your trade partner, or if Nico is like the end goal, get at least one more at least somewhat valuable player in there because like you said, Mario, 2 starters for sure are going to the other manager in that one. Before we get on over to Sunday's action, we got a message from our friends over at Dabble. Dabble isn't just another DFS app, it's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big. You can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble is easy. New users get $25 free when signing up, no deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description below to download Dabble today. All right, Sunday. Let's get it out of the way. Ravens, Jets. Ravens 13.5-point favorites. The Ravens narrowly escaping the clutches of the Cleveland Browns last week, and more specifically, Myles Garrett. He was just caving in the entire offense for pretty much the whole game, but the
He
Ravens
should be
found a way.
MVP. He should be MVP on a 2-15 team or whatever the Browns are going to go.
He is outrageous.
Because it's true. He is the MVP.
I don't think there's a better football player than him right now. You'd be hard pressed to find one. He's something else. But the Ravens still managed to get it done. I think a lot of that had to do with Shadur Sanders coming in and just really no feel like the stuff that you were talking about last week when it comes to Sanders and just like that inability to like feel the pressure and stuff. That was definitely evident in the you felt like the Ravens defensive philosophy entirely changed once he got into the game because they just blitzed Sanders until the game ended basically. And we saw the ultimate end result there. But the Ravens offense was clearly stuck in the mud, but now they get a Jets team whose defense is, obviously at the trade deadline got pretty offloaded with Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner both being sent out. So that I think informs this huge spread. Ravens minus 13.5.
Yeah, I'd take the Ravens to cover this. I guess Tyrod Taylor, I don't know, not in the sense that it might change the point total, but it should, I guess, help the passing game of the Jets at least run more plays. complete more passes, maybe. Maybe not more points though. Probably the same amount or a similar amount of sacks. So Tyrod's not going to take this offense, which is just dead, if only for the lack of from scrimmage ability. Tyrod can't change that, and it's not his fault that he can't. But it will be pretty bad, and I think the Jets defense, they continue to play pretty well, admirably in the run game, but even with Lamar maybe still not at 100%, I just feel like the Jets defense can't do anything to make the game competitive, and the offense will only be a weight around the neck of the defense. So the defense might hold Derrick Henry to like 22 yards on his first 10 carries, but if the Ravens just don't turn the ball over more than once, and if they stick with the ground game, don't get too cute with it, if the Jets are playing too much interior two gap kind of stuff, maybe get Keaton Mitchell some outside stuff to loosen them up a little bit. They stick with something like that, the Jets defense is eventually going to get exhausted, and I think this is another game that the Ravens can win a double-digit lead without making Lamar Jackson do a whole lot.
Yeah, I think that this could end up looking a little bit like the Miami game in that sense, where Lamar doesn't really need to run for the offense to have success. I'm looking for big games from like Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers. I think Henry will have an easy enough time. I think that if you have Henry, you're at least happy with the opportunities he's getting. Maybe the efficiency isn't quite what you would have hoped
Start him
for.
here.
Yeah, this is the spot to fire him up. As far as our flex rankings are concerned on the Jets side of things, the only one that ranks inside the top 100 is Brees Hall, who checks in as the number 30 flex option this week. So, if you have Brees, pretty much got to roll with him. But outside of that, I don't think there's any need to galaxy brain your way into starting some Jets here.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. I don't think they're even trying to play all that serious. They were doing like audition stuff last week with Isaiah Williams and John Mechie and Adonai Mitchell, and uh, good for Mechie, but man, Mitchell is a real bummer, and Williams is, in my opinion, just kind of like a backup practice squad type. So this team sucks.
AD Mitchell had great hands at Georgia. I really don't know what
Did he
happened.
really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yet
Yeah,
he
that
had a
is
touchdown
surprising.
in every single playoff game that he played in at Georgia, and I think he had one in when he was with Texas
He has
as
the
well. So
worst focus you'll ever see, apparently. But I don't understand how it's so hard. Like, get him, I don't know, some Ritalin or something. It's like that. It can't be this difficult. But yeah, you'd think he just cannot catch a pass at this point.
you get him on Ritalin, and then you might see pink spiders with Christina Aguilera's face on it to
Uh,
reference of an extremely
Phil
old.
Collins,
Yeah,
fan 809 Mitchell, but he broke
ex-
out, so it was worth it.
extremely old South Park reference for our younger listeners there. Um, On to a slightly maybe better game. We got the Bears hosting the Steelers. The Bears are 2.5 point favorites in this one. The over under checking in somewhere between 45.5 and 44.5. Obviously, the big question on the Pittsburgh side, which will be decided Wednesday. So if you're listening to this a little bit later in the week, you'll have the fuller clarity than we do at this stage. But in regards to Aaron Rodgers and his non-throwing hand wrist injury.
Yeah, did they not call that a break or something? Fracture?
I haven't seen the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, but a few small beers, like they're like, it's a small break. It's a small break. So whatever that means, but it sounds like it's still technically a break.
Yeah, that sounds pretty difficult to play with. I can't remember a quarterback ever playing with a club or even one of those carpal tunnel injury wrist thing, or maybe that's for skating, roller skating. I don't remember, but I've never seen a quarterback play with either of those things, even on a non-throwing hand. So I don't think Rodgers will be the first. That's just I can't really imagine how it would work. So I assume Mason Rudolph's got to play probably more than one game. If Rodgers goes out there somehow, I have a feeling it's going to be a spectacular mess, and he'll probably just get hurt again. So, bigger question, I think, is the Jaylen Warren one. Jalen Warren insists that he could have played last week through the ankle thing or whatever it was. They're expressing optimism, therefore, that he'll play in this one and maybe even be himself more or less. But even if it's a low ankle sprain, and while if it were a low ankle sprain, it would make sense that he only missed like a little time and even play the next week. But it still might be there a little bit. He might be more 85 90 than 95 100. So don't know what to make of this Steelers team if I can't take for granted some amount of running game. Like maybe Kenneth Gainwell can pick up the slack as necessary, but I see Gainwell as a pretty limited runner, definitely a better pass catcher than runner, and not explosive in either capacity. So the Bears are not a good team, and the Steelers with their pass rush, I feel like I would normally expect them in the sense that like I would be disappointed in them if they can't win with assets like those, but I can't take the Pittsburgh offense for granted in this one. And especially if they can't run well, they get into a lot of trouble quickly. So, could be kind of a messy game on both sides of the ball for various reasons for both teams.
And we're starting to get to bear weather season. So
Oh
like
god,
what yeah, it should be kind of sloppy, slippery out there probably in Chicago. So yeah, I'm seeing this total and it smells like an under to me, but
it would have
what
to be
do
a
I know?
defensive over, if so, as in like interception returns for touchdowns, that kind of thing.
I could see Caleb messing this one up. I really could. I think I'm going to take the Steelers to cover this.
I'll take I'll take the Bears, but not with any amount of confidence. It's just kind of like if it's Mason Rudolph, Mason Rudolph in 3rd and 9. I don't know if it matters what the defense is.
I mean, that's definitely true. And then I suppose on the Bears side that there is a little bit more fantasy juice. Some more guys on the radar. We have both Swift and Manungai ranked inside our top 30 for running back. Swift sort of like a high end running back two. Manungai kind of like a high end running back three. So are you kind of with it on those rankings there? And both of them are theoretically pretty startable here.
I'd like to think so because I do like both players, and I think it's probably a good way for the Bears to run their offense, getting the run game, both of those guys rolling as much as possible. I don't know how much I take for a given that Monungai gets another 12 or so carries, though. I worry maybe that was a sort of higher range outcome for him, and maybe the 7 from week 10 and week 8 is just as likely as the 12 from against the Vikings. So less enthusiastic, less secure about the Monungai pick, but Swift, we have reason to assume will play nearly 2/3 of those snaps, and you can definitely feel pretty secure about that. I think Swift pretty quietly is on course for definite career year this year. So not a world beater or anything, but he's quietly been quite good this year.
I'm happy to see it. I've always been a DeAndre Swift guy, but always been kind of like nicked up or not in the best situation. So good to see him kind of thriving in Chicago. We do have a good and pertinent question from our guy Pierce. He wants to know about Colston Loveland because the Steelers ranked 29th in points allowed, fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends. So theoretically, this is a pretty cake matchup for one Colston Loveland, who is coming off of what uh, a decent game last week, 3 for 40. So still no touchdowns in that one. Still only has the touchdowns, I think, from the Bengals game a couple weeks ago where he had two. But consistently seeing 4 or 5 targets every single week. You think he can do the requisite amount of damage against this kind of leaky Steelers safety group?
Yeah, it's an issue of limited opportunity and with sort of an overqualified group of players around him fighting for the same targets as Loveland is. But it's been a very encouraging past month for Loveland. Like it's the 118-yard, 2-touchdown game that everyone will think of. But even the game before that in week 8, 51 snaps against the Ravens, uh, 42 snaps in week 10, 56 against the Vikings last week. He just hasn't run that many routes the last 2 weeks because the Bears have been running so much and running well. So on the one hand, I don't know for sure that Loveland will get more than the 20 routes per game he's averaged over the last 2 weeks anytime soon. But if he does, which is to say, if the Bears just throw the ball more than they have the last 2 weeks, then I think you have reason to pretty quickly get high on Loveland's chances because he's still averaging well over 2 yards per route run over the last 2 weeks, which would be one of the highest figures in the league at tight end. So if that route count pushes for 30 or more, then I think you can like Loveland against pretty much any opponent. I just can't really figure out. It's not that I'm worried about him being held in to chip block against TJ Watt or whatever so much. It's will Caleb Williams only throw 25 passes? Like that's the only real concern with Loveland.
I feel like if you're the Bears, you got to test that secondary. I know the pass rush is scary, but I think you have so many good players in that pass catching group. You got to go after them. I think, and then
Loveland's
Uncle
good
Ted.
too.
He is good. So Uncle Ted points out that Cole Kmet is back, but I think he's the one that would get the chip duties on TJ Watt, that type of thing. I think he has a lower targets per route run than Loveland. Loveland more of a conventional like pass catching tight end. So I still feel like I'll cap my projection at like 5 targets for Loveland. So kind of just like do with that what you will. We haven't ranked it as tight end 10 this week. So I think that speaks to maybe it's a little bit of a light week at tight end. Maybe some of those bye weeks are taking some of our better options off the table, but we do have him as tight end 10 for what it's worth. Pierce also has another question in regards to Parker Washington. His game's a little bit later on, but we'll grab this question now. How do you feel about Parker Washington going forward? Obviously, I think a lot of people were excited about him going into last week's game. Didn't really deliver, but I think also the Jags just figured out pretty early on bully ball, just crush the Chargers with the run game, and they did.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to look at the alignment splits from that game yet, but I'm assuming Jacoby Myers played the flanker rep the vast majority of the time, and Parker Washington, going into that game, had played the slot the most of them. I assume Parker Washington mostly played the slot against the Chargers too. The slot is where the Chargers are toughest to run against because it's either Tarheeb Still or Derwin James, who's probably in that coverage. So, in other words, Parker Washington was going against Derwin James, Tarheeb Still, while Jacoby Myers was going against Dante Jackson, Cam Hart, Benjamin St. Juste. And those latter 3 guys are definitely easier to beat. So, against the Cardinals, I don't know how it all works out because when they're healthy at corner, at least Garrett Williams is in the slot, and he was definitely one of the better looking slot corners in the whole league going into this year. So it could be another tough matchup for Parker Washington in the slot if he stays there. But on the boundary, if Will Johnson is out again, or if I assume Max Melton's doing okay at this point. But if Max Melton and Will Johnson are both out there, that outside rep is also pretty tough for Arizona. So I don't know what gives between Washington and Myers this time around. I think it's a tougher matchup for it's an more even matchup for the two of them than it has been the last 2 weeks. And so I think Washington probably does better this game than last week, but I'm not getting my hopes up for a good game exactly.
I think the Jaguars could lose that game. We'll get into
Yeah,
that a little bit later. But like that would be extremely Jags to have a game like last week where they sort of like re-put themselves on the map by just dismantling the Chargers. Laying an egg in Arizona seems like the logical next thing that they would do. The
it's a good
Jaguars make
defense when it's
no
healthy.
sense to
So
me.
it's yeah, I think the Jags are clearly fragile, and they'd rather not face a defense that has its stuff together.
That's what I'm thinking. Let's move on over to Patriots Bengals. Famously, the Bengals will not have Jamar Chase this week. Jalen Ramsey got in his head a little bit, so Jamar Chase suspended for this one. Whew, are you? I mean, this game, we've got an over under of 50 and a half. So we're expecting a lot of, fantasy fireworks on this one. We know that the Patriots are really difficult to run on. So we're going to see, I think with that condition being in there, plus no Jamar Chase, it, like I was talking about with Trey McBride last week and Marvin Harrison being out, like, is he going to break the target or catch record? Could T. Higgins do it this week?
I suppose so. I don't know how easy it'll be to get those catches if Christian Gonzalez is following him. I gotta check to see if the Patriots have started moving Gonzalez around yet. But if Gonzalez is on Higgins, I feel like that's kind of pushing sort of the limits of Higgins' talents. Not that he can't get some wins there. It's just that T. Higgins, he's overqualified, yes, as a wide receiver too, but Christian Gonzalez might still be that tier of cornerback one that even as a wide receiver one caliber receiver himself, T. Higgins wouldn't project that great against. If you can somehow get T. Higgins against Carlton Davis, Marcus Jones, if that somehow is allowable, those would be matchups that you can work with for sure. And in any case, you like Higgins this week, even if Higgins is inefficient on a per target basis. As you said, that target count could be pretty enormous. I don't think that the Bengals are going to be able to run it all, or
No.
not much anyway. So there could be, I don't know, if the Bengals throw it 35 times, Higgins getting any less than 10 targets would be pretty disappointing, I guess.
I just don't see it. Yeah, I think I'm like setting my baseline at like 11 and a half targets for Higgins. So I think even with the potential of an inefficient game there, hard to like leave him out of my DFS plans for Sunday. And then of course, if you have him in season long, you're firing him up no matter what. But this is a particularly good setup for him, at least in terms of the opportunities on the Patriots side of the ledger. I mean, we've all just kind of dreamt of this potential matchup where Drake May gets to go against, not just like the worst defense in the league this year, but one of the worst in not just recent, but like history. Like I think Nick Whalen brought up the point after the Bears game. They have the second worst defense in like the DVOA era, which dates back pretty far.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. I think for Drake May, the issue is that for fantasy, I mean, the issue is that the Patriots don't seem inclined to throw the ball that much. And so even in this really good matchup, Drake May could finish with something like 27 pass attempts, in part because he might average something like 10 yards per attempt and score three or, I don't know, four touchdowns on that light pass attempt volume. But I won't get my hopes up for like a bonkers Josh Allen type game from Drake May. I think between his passing and his rushing ability, he could easily do that. But I don't think the Patriots are all that eager to sort of spam stats with May. Like sometimes I feel like I'm a people take me for like a Josh Allen critic, and what I see him more as is like Allen Iverson, the football player, and that like they kind of just try to spam stats with like stats as much usage as possible. The Patriots are not using Drake May that way. They're content to use him more like almost like a Troy Aikman kind of thing, where it's like he's only throwing 25 times a game and they still score 40 points and no one cares. But points should be scored in this Patriots offense, and Travian Henderson should have another big game. I forgot to look at what's going on with Stevenson, but if he's out, Terrell Jennings, I think, could get going a little bit if he's over that whatever injury that he had last week. Stephon Diggs, the only thing holding him back in a game like this, in addition to May's generally limited pass attempt volume, the only thing limiting Diggs here is the fact that other players can probably do the damage the Patriots need. So it's like, to be fair to Mac Hollins, who I really did not like any previous stop in the NFL, he's been efficient, highly efficient this year. And if he stays as efficient as he's been, and if his blocking is otherwise a plus, then he's clearly a productive element. Somebody else among the pass catchers, the tight ends, they're all, I think, on the table to produce here for the Patriots.
Well, all right. So we have a conspiracy theory here from Uncle Ted that I think warrants further discussion. He says that Drake May is cloned from Tom Brady. There is real smoke to that conspiracy. And listen, Tom Brady cloned his dog. I
Well, I was
mean,
gonna say, I think Drake May looks more like he was cloned from a golden retriever or something than Tom Brady, and but definitely an Airbud scenario where it's very good at the sport. I'm not saying like I'm not saying this is a negative in his prospect profile. It's just kind of that kind of dumb grin that Drake May always has. It's like he just always feels like he's been told he's a good boy recently, and he's in a good mood.
well, and Drake May went to UNC. Bill Belichick coaches at UNC. Like, could have he been developed in that laboratory
Oh
there?
yeah,
So I think there's legs to this, and I look forward to Uncle Ted getting to the bottom of this. So Ted, that's your assignment for
Uncle
for
Ted in the
next week.
field.
Yeah, we need you on this one because you know what? I'm listening. Um, our guy Michael has a question. I think that this is one that's a little bit of a deeper league type of question, which I dig. So it's about someone that's probably not on your radar in your classic 10 teamers or maybe even your 12 teamers, but is Isaiah Davis droppable? Already has Kyron, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, and Woody Marks on there. Cutting Isaiah Davis would ultimately bring in or open up a spot for either a receiver or a tight end, such as Colston Loveland or Brenton Strange. I think I'm ready to cut bait with anyone on the Jets not named Brees Hall or yeah, I guess Garrett Wilson, but Garrett Wilson's hurt right now.
Yeah, and in this in Michael's team's case, Isaiah Davis is just the Jets, the Brees Hall analog to the Kyron Williams, Blake Corum part, and you'd rather have Corum in this case than Isaiah Davis, both because the Rams are a much better team, and you do have Kyron Williams already. So yeah, just cut Davis; it won't hurt you.
It's not going to hurt. No, I don't think so. And then I know we got maybe arguably a little far afield there, but what one last note on the Patriots here as it pertains to their run game specifically is Ramondre is in line to practice as of Wednesday. So we'll check his status throughout the week, but it is a toe he's coming back from. That can be tricky for any football player,
Yeah,
let alone a running back. So keep an eye there, see how his status progresses by the time that the Friday injury report drops. Next up, we got the Giants and the Lions. We got the Lions checking in as like a 10-point favorite, maybe 11 at some shops, but that's what Bet Rivers has it at. The Lions, I guess that was one of those games where like the first series, you're like, oh yeah. It's Goff outside in the cold. Because we didn't we like not see that at all last year?
they've probably done a pretty good job of hiding him, but I feel like it's been a little better for Goff the last 2 years than it was for most of his history. Certainly when he was with the Rams and such. But yeah, it's always the question with Goff is always the sum of stress that he's facing, and so cold, outdoor wind, whatever, those things can contribute to it. But when he doesn't have the full amount of shelter that he needs, if the shelter is lessened by an injury at left guard, that counts. If Laporta is out, that counts. Goff needs a lot of help to produce the way that people generally associate with him. And in a game like this against the Eagles, yeah, it was outdoors. The weather wasn't great. But Laporta being out, Coyote Awasika being at left guard instead of Christian Mahogany, these things all add up to weight on Goff, and he can't carry weight. He can only make a machine that is already well built, well constructed, continue operating, but he can't carry an offense. It's just not who he is.
He needs good conditions, and I don't mean that in the weather sense usually, but when Goff has time, he's a total surgeon. Like he'll pick teams apart. Like we've seen that time and again. But a team that gets pressure on him hurries him up. Like
And
that
it's only
that
in a
internal
part of the
clock is sped up.
field. He
Hmm.
like he just can't throw downfield, and it's part of it's the only reason why Jameson Williams didn't do anything until 3 weeks ago, and now they've been using him a little bit more underneath. But yeah, it's just even with Gibbs breaking a lot of yardage after the catch, it's still just not a great look for Goff. And this is a trap NFL teams are going to keep falling into, especially with all the EPA hucksters pushing nonsense consultancies out there. But Jared Goff, when he produces so great as he has the last few years, you need to have the discipline to resist the temptation to try to scale that up. You can't look at Jared Goff's success as a passer and say, oh, now that means we can do that as much as we want. It's more like you should feel lucky that you got that much out of him and look for a way to sort of retreat and consolidate your position, So if there needs to be lifting done by the quarterback in this game, the Lions needed that. The Lions in this game needed a Herbert, Mahomes, Josh Allen caliber quarterback to transcend the conditions that they were left with. And it's not Jared Goff's fault that he's not anything near those players, but he is not anything near those guys.
No, not close. So that gets a little bit dicey there. But I mean, against the Giants, like I imagine that
he'll
the Lions
rake here.
get...
He pushes over like weak teams like this, especially when they're in Detroit and puts up huge numbers. Giants definitely are going to get rocked here.
My man Jackson Dart is going to practice though. I think he'll be back.
I don't think it matters much. I think Jameis Winston would have been a challenging matchup for the Lions corners because they try to get by so much on that press coverage at the line and sort of deterring the quarterback by making them feel like their rhythm is off. And it's like Jameis doesn't care. Jameis is chucking it. Like he doesn't care what the rhythm feels like. It's going. We're firing it. Jackson Dart will be fine. It's certainly not a downgrade. It's probably an upgrade to go to Dart. But I think even if it's Jameis out there, the Giants should be able to move the ball a little bit. I just think the Lions on the other side should be able to score like 40 points.
I think so too. I'm going to take the points. I think the Giants keep it close, but I don't expect the Lions to. I think we're going to have some serious questions about the Lions if they somehow lose this game. And then we do have a quick defense question from our guy Michael. Playing in the same game, Falcons or Saints team defense. We actually, oddly enough, have them ranked right next to each other. We actually have the Saints slightly ahead. We have the Saints as the number 10 team defense for this week, and the Falcons at 11. Kirk Cousins.
Did I miss something? I would think the Falcons are definitely preferable there, just because I mean their overall defense has taken some hits, sure, but their pass rush is still live, and I believe Alvin Kamara hasn't had any success against anybody this year. So not that I expect the Falcons to score a lot of points on the other side. I think their defense could be in a really good spot here.
It should, but like the Falcons gave up 1 million points to the Panthers again last week, and like I just the Falcons are always going to be less than the sum of their parts. It seems like under this current coaching regime, and maybe it doesn't even matter who the coach is with the Falcons. Like they just are that kind of cursed. I love this roster, and yet
I'll just say if Zach Harrison gets back, I think somebody else was out last week too, but I don't know. Sometimes teams just have one-off. Brandon Dorless might have been out. Sometimes teams just have bad one-off weeks, and I think in week 10 it was just the Jonathan Taylor. It was kind of a buzzsaw 9-10, and then for some reason 11 the Panthers just have the Falcons number, but I don't know. They got the better of the Bills. The pass rush definitely is real. I don't know. I guess you can't go wrong because neither of these teams is going to score many points, but I always chase pass rush when I'm going with fantasy defenses.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Although the Falcons will just have a statue back there at quarterback. Not that Penix was overly mobile, so I feel like Cousins is going to like work his way into getting sacked.
Looks pretty bad so far.
God, miserable. The
good
whatever
contract.
Falcons fans that had come out into the daylight earlier this year, living around here in Atlanta, like they're all gone. I see no Falcons stuff around here. Going to be a gross game, but anyway, that finishes off our Giants Lions discussion. I think we do have another question here. Best of this group of receivers to stash or hang on to between Kayshon Boutte, Josh Downs, or Greg Dortch. For me, it's one of the first two.
Do I think either of those first two return? I don't think Boutte does. I'm looking up Josh Downs right now.
Okay.
Dortch does is why I'm checking. So
Right.
yeah, it's just punt returns for Downs, whereas Dortch returning a lot of kicks this year. I assume for not that much, but yeah, without knowing what the return yards count for, it's kind of hard to answer that one. If in terms of general fantasy football leagues, I would go with probably Downs if it's PPR, probably Butte if it's not. So sorry, kind of cop out answer.
No, but I mean, it fits, right? Like Butte, like we're never going to really be able to count on him for high target counts on a week to week basis. We can at least see that with Downs a little bit more. So um, that's where I'm at with it. And he adds on that it's 1 point for every 10 return
That's a
yard.
lot. So I guess Dortch, because I mean he's getting like 60, 70, 100 return yards a game just as a kick returner. So it's almost like he doesn't even need to play receiver to
Yeah,
be
he just needs like
useful.
3 catches.
I don't know. These are all, I guess, good enough choices, but that return part makes it difficult for me to think it through, to be honest.
And then last question before we move on to our next game: is Torrey Horton droppable now?
Yeah, it's too bad. I don't think you need to drop him, but to be useful again this year, he probably needs at least one of Cooper Kupp or Rashid Shaheed to miss a game. So I think Horton is good, but I think the Seahawks are content to have some depth and not force him onto the field.
Yeah, it's going to be really hard to time it up, like barring injuries elsewhere in that Seahawks receiving core. So I think Horton on Ford, like dynasty, like you're definitely like hanging on and excited to have him. It's just difficult in your redrafts right now. Before we move on to Vikings Packers, we do have a message from our friends at Blue Wire. All right. Vikes Packers, this one at Lambeau. Packers 6.5 point favorites in this one. The over under spicy 40.5.
Yeah, pretty brutal year for all involved,
Yep.
but the Packers um they have a narrow path, I guess, where they can still get somewhere helpful, but no Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, of course, already a huge loss. We're at the point, I think, where the Packers are depleted enough that we're sort of we have reason to ask what is even supposed to be good about this anymore? Like where's the part we point toward in this offense and say, here's where the numbers will come from. Like, we know it's not going to be Luke Musgrave. The Packers got so sick of him so quickly that they basically
Johnny
went with
Fitz.
yeah, they went with just all blocker tight ends. They basically benched Luke Musgrave last week. So, he's a dud, whatever. Jaden Reed might come back. Who cares? You only play him like 28 snaps a game, even when he's healthy, even when he's rolling. So this offense is just and actually I like Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks both as backup running backs go, but Emmanuel Wilson, even if he's a starter grade pure runner, he probably is a bit of a question mark on passing downs. That's generally why you see Brooks play, even though Wilson always produces so well from scrimmage. So there's ways complications can occur at running back that Jacobs always covered up. And while Jordan Love sort of has an opportunity here to rise to the occasion and sort of really take ownership of this offense and try to put it all in order and guide them through this stretch, I don't really expect him to be able to do that. And this Vikings defense is not the one you want to go against when you're sort of working through issues. I don't know. On the other hand, I think the Green Bay defense can clearly get the better of the Vikings offense, but I guess I feel like both defenses are looking kind of dangerous here.
Yeah. So I think that this is a game that could be played into the 30s. I guess, for everyone knows, like if you're invested in the Packers offense, you're frustrated. I think especially with any of the pass catching options, Josh Jacobs obviously having that knee injury, that spurned, let's see, a 32 percent fab bid for Emmanuel Wilson in one league that I'm in that waivers ran already. I'm guessing that he had Jacobs on his team already, so had to like make sure. But I don't know. Is that about right to you at this stage of the season where
Especially
you
this
might?
stage of the year, it's like, what are you
Yeah,
even saving for at a certain point? So, I get it. And again, I actually think Wilson is probably, starter acceptable 50 grade kind of runner, if not better. It's the pass catching and especially the pass blocking that's probably the ongoing concern with Wilson, and it's why even though Wilson might get something like 20 carries in this game, you might only see him play 30 snaps to something like 25 for Brooks, 20 or something like that for Brooks, because Brooks definitely the more fluent passing down guy between the two.
Yeah, and that is an inconvenient truth for us fantasy managers. There needs to be a functionality there when it comes to pass blocking from your running back. So that's going to get guys on the field that maybe are a bit of a fly in the ointment for your fantasy interests. On the Viking side, I think people are starting to panic when it comes to their Jefferson and Addison
No
investments.
reason to panic. It's settled. There's nothing to truly worry about. There's just watching. There's just the beholding part.
Yeah, because you can't really bench either of them. Maybe Addison if you really nailed like your
Addison, you
your
can, I
receiver
think.
pitch, but Jefferson you just gotta do
Yeah,
it, and just it's not going to
we
be
cut
great.
Hawkinson. Hawkinson's like tight end 42, so at least we're not asking that question anymore.
I've never even been a Hawkinson guy, and I talked myself into him so hard during draft season.
That's probably my fault,
No,
but yeah,
no,
I just thought I didn't think JJ McCarthy would be literally one of the worst 5 quarterbacks I've ever seen. I thought it'll probably suck, but it probably won't matter because it's just so easy. And uh, he's somehow he's going to get benched for Max Brosmer maybe this game, definitely pretty soon, one way or another.
yeah, I know some people out there are itching to see old Brosmer
It's time.
out there. Yeah, I think it might be time. At least I want to see it. I mean, the Vikings are otherwise kind of depressing to watch on offense at this stage. Our guy Master wants to know. He's got Jamar Chase, and Trey McBride. Would you offload either of them to bolster some other positions at this stage of the season? Like, I think for me, like I'm looking at how my depth looks without either of those guys. So if he trades away Jamar Chase, he would still have Debo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, Khalil Shakir. I think I think you could do that. Um,
I
I
probably
think
wouldn't. I mean, only in the sense that how likely is it that the other person will give you enough that it's worth trading away someone, especially like McBride, who's probably poised to be something like a top 10 overall play this year. Chase, obviously, when he's rolling, he's a top 5 pick. So I don't know why anyone would be so eager to give you a bounty of running backs that makes it worth your time, you know?
yeah, because running back is what Master needs right now because he's got like Tyrone Tracy, Quinshon Judkins, Amarian Hampton, Tony Pollard. So like running back would be what you're aiming for. If something and you would need like a top five ish running back, I think, in order to trade Chase away and feel okay about it. And I don't think I would move off of McBride. I would
Which seems
consider
fine,
maybe,
probably. By the way, it's just I would just keep rolling with it.
yeah, maybe see if someone would like take the bait on Pitts or Fannin. But McBride has got to be like your kind of workhorse the rest of the way. Before we get on over to our next game, we got a message from our friends at Trophy Smack. You dominated your fantasy football league all season long, and now it's time to show it off. Trophy Smack turns your league domination into hardware build to flex. From championship belts, trophy rings, and chains, they've got everything a true champion needs to make victories unforgettable. And don't forget about shaming that league loser. They've got items like high visibility loser vests. That's awesome. Embarrassing singlets and humiliating license plate frames. Love that as well. Trophy Smack fuels the glory and the punishment every league needs to keep the season unforgettable. Trash talk fades, but hardware lasts forever. You earn this moment, so claim it. Visit trophysmack.com to lock in your hardware and take 10% off with code ROTOSMACK10. That's TrophySmack. Uh, and that's at trophysmack.com, trophysmack.com, code ROTOSMACK10. You can thank us later. I am currently, Mario, in a college football fantasy league with like 50 or 60 other people in it. We're down to the Final Four. I'm in the Final Four.
Oh,
The
nice.
champion gets a nice belt from Trophy Smack. My guy Joe Arpezi at Purple Rain on Twitter putting that one on. That's just a true sickos clinic in the college fantasy football world. So I got my eyes on that belt, and I got to clear some room to hang that puppy up. We got to get there though. Moving on, Colts Chiefs. Chiefs 3.5-point favorites. Chiefs fighting for their playoff lives right now. They are
Yeah.
5-5. You look at the rest of their schedule, including this game. They also have to play the Chargers again. They also have to play the Broncos again. And I think there's one other tough game in there as well. I think the Chiefs lose 3 more games. That puts them at 9-8. Then they're just kind of at the mercy of a lot of stuff there. Are the Chiefs going to miss the playoffs?
They might. I think in this game, it makes sense that they're favored. It's not as if I expect them to win by a lot. I thought they would beat the Broncos, but somehow they just had no answer at all for the pass rush, and meanwhile, of course, did enough going on the ground game. I think the difference in this matchup is Mahomes should be able to throw the ball. The Indianapolis pass rush, there's parts you have to take into account, but I believe DeForest Buckner is still out, so that run defense might not be as good as we're accustomed to from the Colts. And I think it's a general rule, if the Chiefs are running on you, your defense is in some trouble because the Chiefs are not that serious about running the ball. They're not that good at it. So if the running game gets going at all for the Chiefs, particularly in that case, I think Mahomes will be fine. But I just think the Colts defense is not truly strong anywhere outside of that Sauce Gardner rep while DeForest Buckner is out. And the Denver Broncos defense was able to take down Mahomes because they have a crazy amount of talent that the Colts just clearly don't have.
I think I still lean Indianapolis. I think the Chiefs are, I don't know, they can't run the ball. That's a problem. I was drawing the parallel on XM with Jeff and Jim the other day, where the Chiefs kind of remind me of the Alabama of the NFL, where like they can't run the ball, and eventually like defenses are just gonna be like, okay, they can't run the ball, so we're just gonna have light fronts. We're gonna just throw a ton of guys in the secondary, and you're gonna have to try to figure it out. And obviously, you trust Patrick Mahomes to be able to do that better than pretty much anybody, but that level of difficulty, I think, ultimately with just the numbers game ends up being a challenge for this Chiefs team. And Indianapolis, nice and well rested coming off the bye. I think Indy can do this.
Yeah, they can, but Steve Spagnuolo can also get the better of Daniel Jones. So I think it makes perfectly good sense to take the Colts. Their run game is obviously a lot better, and if the Chiefs had been listening to us 5 years ago or whatever it was, they would have Jonathan Taylor on their team
Yeah.
instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and this entire scenario would be moot. But I just expect Mahomes to be able to beat this Indianapolis defense. I think Indianapolis's defense hasn't faced a lot of extended scrutiny, and I think they have numerous weak spots that will be more apparent in a game like this, including the ground game. I mean, it's not even really their fault in a way, but if they don't have DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart can still hold 2 gaps. Neville Gallimore can play a little bit, I guess, but DeForest Buckner is basically a monster, and when you subtract him from the defense, they just aren't nearly as good, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like at once you can point to the fact that like the Chiefs defense let down against Bo Nix of all people last week.
It was all the
But
defense, though, really. I mean, Nix did play better in that game than he has probably like all year or whatever,
yeah,
but it's just Vance Joseph's defense is just so crazy. I really can't remember the last time a defense, not only just the theme of generally really strong pass rush, but the quickness with which it happens. It seems like there has to be some kind of record occurring with the Broncos pass rush and like the number of times they hit a quarterback in under a second and a half.
yeah, they get there in a hurry. I think I forget if the metrics still say that the Titans have the best defense, but my eyes tell me that the Broncos do. So I mean, this should be a little bit easier for the Chiefs offense, no question. And the Chiefs are in desperation mode, so I definitely understand where you're coming from. Let's grab Titans Seahawks. I don't think there's a ton to discuss here, but Sam Darnold bounced back.
You would think so. Uh, I think we kind of knew, kind of expected, but due to the success that Sam Darnold had all year, we started to doubt ourselves and our prior expectation that, well, surely the Darnold game will happen any minute now. We started that countdown way back in like week 5. Didn't happen for a long time, and then it extremely happened against the Rams, of course. So it's in a way a good sign for the Seahawks that they could be so close to winning that game, even with Darnold throwing 4 interceptions. You really have no business being competitive against any team in the league when you throw 4 interceptions, let alone one as good as the Rams. But the Seahawks uh, defense, of course, kind of already looking good, made themselves, I think, more convincing yet with that showing. So don't know how the Titans get a single thing going. The only question in this game, for me, is how much do the Seahawks get going? And Tennessee defense just doesn't have a whole lot there. So I guess the answer I would suspect is the Seahawks get going a lot in this one.
Yeah, I don't see the Titans hanging in there. I mean, they did against Davis Mills. I don't think on the road in Seattle is or no, they're at home, but even still, I like the Seahawks to win this one handily and the offense to look significantly better than it did a week ago, and for Cam Ward to in the Titans offense to look somehow worse. Afternoon slate. Jaguars, Cardinals. This game kind of interesting though. Jags 2.5 point favorites on the road there. Jags coming off that huge win. Did we learn anything about this Jags team that can be applied, to this coming week? They found the ground game in a pretty significant way against the Chargers. They were shorthanded as far as that pass catching group going into that game did not matter whatsoever. They just rinsed the Chargers, whereas the Cardinals, they had that they played against the Niners, and Jacoby Brissett set the completion record.
Yeah, that was funny. So
That was
in this
awesome.
game, or as far as what we might have learned about the Jaguars, I think we know that they are bought in with Cohen. Like they clearly have issues on a lot of parts of the roster, maybe mostly on offense, but that would have been an easy game, I think, for the Jaguars to kind of go into unfocused or low morale or whatever, and let a Chargers team uh, led by all these like enthusiastic cornballs like Harbaugh, they would have been kind of classic Jags to sort of show up, with a sort of soggy disposition and get pushed around by the Chargers. Except in this case, it was more the opposite. I think in the Chargers part, it was just they were probably kind of like worn down a little bit. I don't know. They didn't seem to have a whole lot of juice in that one. And the Jaguars, and this is also a credit to Cohen, like there was a very specific way they had to win on offense, and they stuck with it and hammered it, which was the ground game. It's so easy, and it's so encouraged nowadays for coaches to abandon the run. If there's any sort of initial difficulty in it, if the other team scores a point, these are reasons normally nowadays you're supposed to stop running the ball and start throwing the ball for as little as, no matter how poor the returns are, you're just supposed to throw it in that case. But even with 2 running backs who weren't suited to it, the Jags, Cohen committed to this sort of true run game, really heavy run game, base offense, running the kind of thing that the Chargers normally do and overpower people with to kind of like break their defensive morale, was something that the Jaguars were doing here. And it would have been easy for Cohen to go off track from that, especially because Etienne and Tootin are both speed backs. They're not really made for the kind of game plan the Jaguars implemented last week, but they implemented it anyway because it was the best one they had on hand. So I think it's a good sign it's a good sign from Cohen that he isn't sort of clinging to any kind of dogma. He's just sort of like, what is our best way to move the ball right now? Let's do that, whatever it is. And it might be the best thing they can do in this game too. I mean, even if Brian Thomas is back, I think we already saw the offense sputter enough with Thomas before his injuries that we can't take it as a given that any eventual return would change a whole lot. The Cardinals defense, meanwhile, can be very good, especially if Will Johnson and Max Melton, Garrett Williams are all out there at corner. This is a difficult matchup for Trevor Lawrence, and the Jaguars pass catchers are not that good. The offensive line, in my opinion, is not that good. So running the ball, if you can get another whatever it was, 38 attempts to ETN and Tootin, that would be the best way to go about it. I just don't know if the Jaguars will have as much luxury to do it this week as last week, because I expect the Cardinals defense to show up a lot better than the Chargers defense did.
I do too. The Cardinals do have a good defense, and their offense is obviously really weird. But
Yeah,
I don't know. It could. I think they can at least move the ball on the Jags. So I'm actually at a stage of Survivor this year where I'm actually thinking about using the Cardinals as home underdogs this week because I've already used the good teams.
I think you could do worse. I mean, I really expect the Arizona defense to show up. And while there's a lot of empty calorie numbers in Brissett's stats against the 49ers, like, it's kind of interesting that Arizona's gone so up tempo with Brissett. They've got at least 67 snaps logged in all of their past 5 games, and in 4 of them they've gone over 70 snaps. So could be a little bit of a DFS, the Coors Field of the NFL right now is just wherever the Cardinals are playing.
I like that analog. That's good. Let's see here. Browns Raiders.
Okay. Well, these teams are bad, and the Raiders, if they can't even move the ball against the Cowboys defense on offense, then it's truly over. So Browns defense is going. Myles Garrett is going to sack Geno Smith 9 times, and I think that might be enough for Judkins to get going in this one. Like, part of the thing that's worked against Judkins lately is the Browns haven't been able to accumulate a field position advantage, a situational advantage, because, of course, the passing variable is always a 0 at best and usually a negative. So the defense kind of needs to bridge that gap and sort of carry the field position question for them. And then if you can sort of be in the position where you're applying pressure as the Browns rather than sort of playing defense and trying to catch up as the Browns, then I think you'll see Judkins start to get the better of some of these defenders. Certainly, I'm expecting. I still expect the bottom to kind of fall out on the Raiders defense as a whole. Like, their peripheral metrics kind of indicate that they're an average or so defense, but you look at the talent of the personnel rep by rep, and it's just garbage. And guys like Devin White have definitely been made to look foolish and run defense. So I think Judkins can get going here. Ashton Genty, I don't have as much hope for, because the team around him is just so bad that honestly, I this is easy to say as someone who doesn't have a ton of fantasy investment in Genty this year. I wish they would just kind of put him, just put him on the shelf until next year when they can field an offensive line that's somewhere better than the 10th worst of the decade, or that might be a little generous, especially after the Powers Johnson injury. Like, this might be like Derek Carr rookie year level offensive line. So nothing can really. Maybe Bowers can still put together. Bowers can probably put together some numbers even if the Raiders get just kind of annihilated. But anyone other than him, I have pretty much no faith in on the Raiders offense. And at least the Browns have Myles Garrett getting 9 or so sacks, and I think Judkins able to kind of do the rest.
Is it Derek Thomas? Does he still hold the sack record single game?
Was that 6 or 5? I don't know.
Chat, help us.
Yeah, so it's a record that if Myles Garrett doesn't have it yet, he might get it in this game.
That's the way to put it. So like as much as I'm inclined to bet against the Browns because it is Shadur Sanders back there, like the Raiders are that bad. And I think like it's such a good point that if like the Raiders were that stuck in the mud against the Cowboys defense at home, then I mean that we're looking at like
Thomas had
you know
7 sacks, so that we need Garrett needs to get 8.
I'm seeing it. I think I see it. That'd be awesome. So if he gets 8 sacks, I think the Browns absolutely win this game. Um, let's see. Better game here. We got the Eagles and the Cowboys. Cowboys looked a little bit rejuvenated on Monday night, beating the Raiders rather comfortably. Whereas the Eagles, I would like to sign a petition that like so we don't have to see them on national TV anymore. I understand that they're very good and they win a lot of games, but they're not fun to watch.
Yeah, the Jalen Hurts offense is weird. He seems to have sort of retreated to a new extent this year. Like he's just in a shell all the time, checking down a lot, taking. I don't know if that's an instruction or sort of a retreat that he does because he feels unsafe doing more. It seems like there's less confidence there than in the past, and maybe that's it. Maybe he was instructed to take checkdowns, so-called surer things, less risky targets. I don't know, but unless something changes, the Eagles are going to sink back to that point that we saw earlier this year when whatever it was, October or so, when everyone was like, "Do the Eagles actually suck? Will they ever actually win another game again?" After they lost to the Broncos or whatever it was, and like they've made some improvements, I guess you could say, but the only real change from this Eagles team and that earlier in the season Eagles team is Jalen Carter's healthier and they've run the ball more consistently with Saquon Barkley. And I don't mean Saquon Barkley has been more consistent. I mean they stopped abandoning the run the way they were earlier in the year, which is why they lost a couple of those games, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But you can't just do this sort of offense where it's like half the time you're running the ball with Barkley and the other half the time you're making these incredibly futile pass attempts with Hurts. It's almost like they just need to run a wishbone and are in a denial about it. It's like you should be throwing the ball like 10 times a game if this is the best you can do. If anything, you should be running the ball more. So I on the one hand, I still expect AJ Brown to somehow break out more, but on the other, I've been expecting that for something like 6 weeks now, and it still hasn't happened. So the Dallas defense has to be enough for even Jalen Hurts to throw the ball in this one. It's like if Bo Nix can light up a defense, I think Jalen Hurts can do it too. But this is just a 1 week thing. If so, it doesn't really answer the questions that the Eagles face going into this game. If you put up a huge offensive game against Dallas, it basically doesn't count.
True. These two, I mean, Dallas gave him a game earlier this year, but obviously Jalen Carter removed himself from the equation in that game before it even really started. And that's why like Javonte Williams had such a good game. So full strength Eagles defense, I think, is what's going to kind of be the ultimate deciding factor in this one. I think their addition of Jalen Phillips is looking pretty good right now
Yeah.
as well. So I give the edge to the Eagles, but in a lower scoring game. So we have a total here at 47 and a half. I'd still like the under, I think, in that one. I can't trust this Eagles offense, and they seem like they're always like just constantly overcorrecting for whatever went wrong the week prior. They were like spamming AJ Brown with targets last week
The
because he
new
was
OC,
complaining.
Patullo
Mhm.
or whatever, doesn't seem so great in my opinion. To be
No,
fair to Jalen Hurts.
so he's more Brian Johnson than
Yeah.
Kellen Moore.
Or
I think is
Steichen.
fair to say. Let's see here. We do have a question from our guy Diego. Flex question: Emmanuel Wilson or Zay Flowers? Well, I'm glad you asked a head-to-head start sit question because we have a fancy new tool. How about that, Mario? A who
That's
should I
slick.
start tool. And you can go ahead, enter in your players. So we got Wilson, we got Flowers here. Just hit that little decide button, see what happens. So this is obviously a flex question, and we've got Zay Flowers being the better start about 63% of the time. That's pretty,
Same here.
I'd say, significant. So I would go with Zay. I mean, Zay playing against the Jets for crying out loud. So I love the idea of I would like to start Wilson where I have him, but if it's between him and Zay Flowers,
Good
I'm
problem to
going.
have.
Yeah, no question. Um, Back to it here. Let's see. Let's go Falcons Saints. Ending the afternoon window. We've got juicy total of 39.5. The Saints 1.5 point favorites at home.
Ugh.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we were talking about this game a little bit before. Apparently, these defenses are both coveted in Week 12
Yeah.
on the count of the offense on the other side. I really can't believe how bad Kirk Cousins has been, but I guess it's just he really is toast at this point at this time. So best to just get over it, I suppose. But I still feel like if you're the Falcons, you have no good excuse for losing if you basically just run the ball the entire game.
Yeah.
Uh, I know it gets tougher the more defenses know that you're just running and the more that they get to sell out against the run. But with B. John Robinson and Tyler Algier, plus I'm assuming the luxury of playing at a slow pace because I'm not expecting the Saints to really score much on the other side. The Falcons should be able to lean on Robinson and Algier until if necessary until the Saints just kind of get too tired to defend it. Whereas I feel like the Falcons, especially if Zach Harrison's back, like when they have him, Dorless, the Clemson guy, and then all those edge rushers all healthy at once, I still think this Falcons defense will trend toward at least above average in pass defense. Run defense probably not, but pass defense, I still think this Falcons defense is above average. And while Tyler Shuck admittedly did a good job in his last start, I am happy to kind of just fade him ongoing.
Even after the Panthers game?
Yeah. I mean, the last Panthers game happened too. And then afterward, the Bills got roughed up by the Falcons defense. Some other teams got roughed up. They didn't have Harrison last week or maybe the week before either. He's been him and Dorless as the ends in that 3-man front, really tough. So I just think that Tyler Shuck has never seen a pass rush like this ever.
Yeah, that is probably a good point. So,
but they're both terrible teams. I don't mean to make it sound like the Saints can't win. And Shuck did well his last game out there, so there is that.
Yeah, I mean, there were some shots in that game that, like, I don't know if you can count on him to hit week in, week out. And then on the Falcon side, adding further credence to your idea that they should just run the ball like 80% of the time in this game. I don't think Drake London is going to be available here.
Really upsetting. Yeah, London was playing at such an insanely high level right before the injury. Like the past 6 weeks, he's been as good as any receiver in the league, and yeah, won't turn 25 until late July, so he doesn't need to rush back. I certainly hope they don't make him play on a PCL issue this year.
No, that would be, yeah, you got to get him back up to 100% because he's one of those building blocks that they have for what I assume will be the next regime. Primetime games here. Got the Bucks and the Rams. Rams 6.5 point favorites.
Right. You'd like the Rams to have won by more last week, given that they intercepted Sam Darnold 4 times, but I guess that's something you can't really complain about too much. It's just they need to be more efficient with their opportunities against the Buccaneers, even in the Buccaneers' limited state. I don't know how much they can scale up the Sean Tucker thing. I don't know how the Rams run defense is better than the Bills. I just don't know if it changes the general point that the Buccaneers have an interest in running Tucker, which they clearly did against the Bills, and Tucker was probably what made the game as anywhere near as competitive as it was. It was pretty much just him for the Buccaneers. It's like this Rams defense is also tough to throw on, so it might, especially given their wide receiver injuries, it might make sense in this game too for the Buccaneers to see Sean Tucker as kind of a key to winning. And whenever Bucky Irving's back, I think Tucker has shown enough too. It's like, you got to keep this guy on the field. Rashad White might be overqualified as a running back 3, but Sean Tucker gives them real corner turning speed, which even Irving doesn't have that. Irving's more just really max acceleration, max processing, doesn't spend any time sitting still basically. But Tucker is like, when you give him room to get that, 6-7 steps in, he starts rapidly picking up speed, and to the point that you can imagine him splitting the safeties. So the Buccaneers should just go very run heavy if necessary, if that's what it takes to get enough room for Tucker to get on the field, because he needs to get on the field.
Yeah, I think so. He's the best pure runner that they have right now with Bucky's situation. So yeah, I mean he's one of those guys where like you don't pay attention to the draft capital because he was awesome at Syracuse, and even if his numbers aren't, or his 40 numbers aren't as good as his personal pro day would suggest, I think he could have a stat line that he would be pleased by this week. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but that's his.
He's
That's his
got a
tagline.
funny way of posting.
Yeah.
His content is peculiar, but I don't. He believes he's the best running back of all time, and I mean, if he runs like last week, who's to say he's wrong?
See, exactly. And then on the Rams side, what do you like here as far as how they match up against this Bucks defense?
I know they kind of took a bit of a beating against the Bills last week, but I still think that the Buccaneers defense is pretty tough, especially if they could get Hassan Reddick back, which maybe they won't. It seems like he's kind of stagnating a little bit in his recovery. So admittedly, when they don't have Reddick, the Buccaneers pass rush, no Reddick, no Kalijah Kancey, of course, it's depleted. There's no obvious way how the Buccaneers are going to get to the quarterback. So that's always a problem against Josh Allen, of course, and a problem against any team. But Matt Stafford, as bad as last week was against the Seahawks, I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt, both because the Seahawks defense has kind of earned it and because Stafford earned it for how he played beforehand. But this Buccaneers corner rotation, I keep mentioning this, is probably the best in the league, or it's pretty close. Don't know what the latest is with Jamel Dean and his hip injury, but when Jamel Dean got hurt, Benjamin Morrison came in, and if Morrison is your third boundary or fourth boundary corner, and you got Jacob Parrish in the slot, Dean, McCollum on the outside, that's a really tough group. So I think it's not a game where I'm going to expect Matt Stafford's best. I think it might be a little bit tempo challenged, a little bit pass attempt volume challenged. So
Did I lose you there? Oh, sorry.
Games like I just some games earlier this year, Stafford had like 4 or 5 touchdowns. Like that one game with against the Eagles or whatever, 180 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns. I'm worried this might be a 180, 220 yard kind of game for Stafford, maybe with 3 or 4 touchdowns. But there's a lot of pressure on his touchdown production either way.
Why are the Rams running so many 3 tight end sets?
It's the cheat code this year. I don't know why, but a few teams tried it out at once after nobody ever doing anything like this in the past. You see Arthur Smith do it. You see the Bills do it. You see McVay do it. And I think McVay is the one, not that this is shocking, but McVay of that group is the one who has the most kind of enduring, ongoing insight. And he's the one who can do the best version of whatever fad might be kind of going across the league. And I think this 3 tight end thing is specifically response, a counter adjustment to the coverage, not just the 2 high coverage cells, but just the amount of zone coverages you're seeing in general right now. It's like there's all these zone hybrid coverages these days that aren't neatly categorized as man or zone. And they have sort of if then modifiers where it's like if the slot receiver does this or this, it turns into cover 4. If the slot receiver does this or this, it's cover 2. These various things that you just can't really decode before the snap. And one way of responding to that is putting massive personnel on the field to force the defense to respond with such massive personnel that it kind of inherently limits their coverage, the amount of zone they can cover with those guys. And if the defense doesn't adjust with that, you just run over them in the meantime. So I think what McVay has kind of done is he's got this offense that's just Puka Nakua, Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams from scrimmage, and everybody else is a blocker basically, or a tight end at least, or an offensive lineman. And they sort of have this ability to based on what the defense is showing them, either go from the run or the pass, but never indicating it based on who's on the field for the offense. And so we might see things change. Like maybe if there's enough of this paradigm where like teams are going 3 tight end and running like crazy, maybe defenses eventually stop running so many zones, and maybe some of these hybrid zones start to reveal limitations, like some situations where they just don't work anymore. But for now, it seems to me like McVay is ahead of the broader league counter adjustments, and I guess that's just another reason to give him acknowledgement. Is probably no worse than the second best play caller, him and Shanahan, whatever order you want to call it.
That was heady stuff there, man. I didn't know that you had that ready to rock quite to that extent. I knew that you
Well, I've been
knew.
obsessed kind of with the 3 tight end thing, and then what the Chargers are doing, and the Ravens kind of started it with Ricard actually accidentally, but then the Chargers started going, well, what if we just put a bunch of 300-pound guys out here? And then the Steelers are like, well, what if we have 3 tight ends and one of the extra eligible blockers is our backup offensive tackle? It's like this is clearly something that is occurring that never did previously.
It's an interesting, development in the league where everything was getting so, it's like with anything. Once everything is too obvious to one side, the team that like counters it and zigs while the other team is zagging,
Life
is
finds
going
a
to get.
way.
Yeah, it does. So the Rams are running pretty significantly the most 13 personnel in the league. They're running it 18 percent of the time, and they are the most effective at it as well. There's an acronym for the stat I was going to use, but I'm just going to leave it alone. But they're the best at it, Mario. Um,
Hey, I was EPA does make sense as a team stat. That's why it's so bad as a player stat. It's just a tautology of the team around them, and then these hucksters say, when the EPA is good, you have to give it all to the quarterback. It's like, no, you give it to the team.
you give it to going 3 tight ends, baby.
Yes.
So there we have it. So it is very effective what the Rams are doing with that. One more message here, and then we'll hit the Monday Nighter. We got a message from Chalkboard. Cash in on your NFL picks this season with Chalkboard. Simply choose more or less on your favorite player stats to win up to 5,000 times your money. For a limited time only, new players receive a free pick and a 100% deposit match. See why over 1 million fans have already locked in with Chalkboard to turn their sports knowledge into whole, cold, hard cash. Whether you're locking in the perfect slip with alternate lines, using the cash out feature to take out your money and run, or hammering the daily promotions, today is your chance to win up to $40,000 on a single entry. Stop sitting on the sidelines and get into the game with Chalkboard Fantasy Sports, now available in 30 plus states. Download Chalkboard today and use the code ROTONFL, that's ROTONFL, to claim your free pick and 100% deposit match. All right, rounding us out here. Panthers, Niners. Panthers, 7-point dogs on the road up in the Bay Area.
Right. Kyle Shanahan, awfully impressive last week. I know from a fantasy lens, people might be very disappointed with Ricky Pearsall and sort of saying, well, he came back and he didn't even do anything. He probably made everybody else in that offense better. It was pretty crazy how slow the 49ers offense was without Pearsall. Both of their starting receivers, Kendrick Bourne, Jawan Jennings, are guys who ran 4.7s out of college. And both of those guys are pushing 30 years old now. So they're definitely not running faster than a 4.7 now. So getting Pearsall back changes the entire complexion of the field, opens up a lot of things. I would hope, that Pearsall himself gets some of these opportunities at some point. But step one is consolidating and, establishing the offense. The 49ers did that last week. We'll see what kind of groove they can get into. It's not as if Christian McCaffrey is going to get 3 touchdowns every week. So I'm still hopeful for Pearsall. Still think he's a good player. Whatever way it goes, I definitely like the 49ers to win this. And I don't know. The cover is a little bit tougher than though, because the 49ers run defense is still in a bad spot. The defense in general is probably in a bad spot. I mean, they've just taken on so many injuries. There's points of clear weakness, which in the past you couldn't really find that. It was only very situational specific weaknesses. Like past years, you'd be like, if they could just get Diamador Lenore one-on-one with a tall receiver, then the 49ers wouldn't like that. But now it's sort of like, yeah, you can run on them all over the place. Doesn't really matter. You can kind of throw whatever you want. 49ers are challenged by pretty much everything right now with the amount of injuries they've had. So it'll be interesting to see if Rico Dowdle bounces back here. I still think a guy like him just burns fast. And I don't know if that sounds like a weird thing to say to people, but I basically just mean you can witness over even just recent NFL history, but certainly if you go back farther, you can find a lot of running backs who sort of show up, make a big splash, burn out really fast, and disappear. And or they start getting hurt or something. And I do think Dowdle has something like that to him. I think something like that must be the explanation for how he managed to disappear at South Carolina after running for like 780 yards in 11 games as a true freshman. He ended up getting benched for guys like Tavian Feaster and like AJ Turner or whatever over the next couple of years. So I think the same way Dowdle's freshman year was easily the best of his college career, we're going to see him just kind of get slower and slower from this point this year. Last week, the numbers that Dowdle had, if Chuba Hubbard posted those numbers, the fantasy media sphere would have talked about how sluggish he looked and how they should go to the backup who was more explosive looking off the bench. But because Dowdle is the lesser paid of the two and is the zero running back target of the two, that narrative has been smothered pretty deliberately, I think. But admittedly, if Dowdle does bounce back here emphatically, and if Chuba Hubbard does not outproduce him on a per touch basis in this game, then it would give reason to believe Dowdle was just a little unlucky last week. But in the meantime, he might not have been unlucky last week, and he definitely was lucky those two huge games he's had. So we'll see.
Yeah, like this is a good setup for him, but yeah, like you do get some concerns as we get closer to the fantasy playoffs that more games like last week could be very much like in the realm of possibility for Dowdle. So like it feels like he's maxed out the value of whatever you got him for, and you might be chasing the big games the rest of the way. But if he's going to have one, that you could do worse than Monday
They
night.
will stick with the run. They're not going to abandon the run no matter what.
No, because they literally just can't afford to do that.
Hey, how about McMillan though? He's good. Good for
Dude,
him.
yeah, I know. I was like asking questions about him last week and shut me up, which I was happy to be shut up on that one.
It's
So
good
good
to
to
see
see
players
him
do good.
cooking. Yeah, he's awesome. All right, I think that's gonna do it for us here. Really appreciate everybody tuning in on the live stream. Best of luck this week. I know this is a key one for your fantasy playoffs. So if you listened, I wish you the best in your matchups this week. If you haven't signed up at RotoWire, you're just listening to us either on your podcast or on YouTube, check us out. 15% off any subscription when you go to rotowire.com and use that code YouTube15. Gets you access to all of our tools, rankings, projections, paywall articles, all that good stuff. Definitely worth it, especially at this stage of the season with the playoff push. So again, that code YouTube15, you can get used to tools like our Who Should I Start tool, which I demoed earlier. Very, very nifty. Start Zay Flowers if it's between him and Emmanuel Wilson. That's going to do it for us here. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.